What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. Today, we're going to be talking about an interview that was done with Hazzikostas with Vice. And in this video, we're going to talk about a few things about where the game is currently and some of the obstacles, as well as some of those woes. Things like the story, as far as the things that, need to be fixed, or kind of the direction of the game where it's going currently. So, of course, as we jump into this, a lot of this is discussion as well as community driven. So I do hope that you find something that is important or useful for you to latch onto. And if you do, let me know in the comments. I do like to see what people have to say about the game currently, past, present, and future, where they're hoping the game to go, like what direction they're hoping to go, especially because we have a lot of content coming to us. But of course, if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to the page while you're at it. Of course, check us live on our Twitch stream. If you can ever, we do play WoW as well as some variety games. On top of that, we'd love to have these discussions live as well. And you can also join the Turtle Club, which is our Discord page, where we like to share some of this content, as well as any sort of news that you want to throw my way that you may want me to talk about in a future video. All right, catch you in the next one. First question says, World of Warcraft is not technically considered a cozy game by default, but I've learned it's much more relaxing than I could ever imagined. Do you envision this type of shift when working on the game? Forgive me for questioning the premise of the question to some extent, or challenging the premise. I've worked in World of Warcraft since 2008 for just over 16 years, but I've also been playing World of Warcraft since day one. Now, to argue that there have been cozy elements in it from the beginning. For many people back in 2004 or 5, it was the most immersive chat room the internet had ever seen for a generation that spent time in AOL chat rooms. If you're a real IRC or ICQ, if you're a real geek, I don't actually know what those are. That was a virtual graphic world. Voice chat tools were starting to come online and come into favor. I can't count how many times I would log into World of Warcraft without a particular goal of running a dungeon or doing anything to slay enemies and advance with my character's power, but rather just socialize. I think there is a heavy social element that I think that most people like to attribute as being gone these days. I think the simple answer to it all is that it used to be other people was your best source of information, because doing so somewhere else took a lot of extra effort. Dual monitors wasn't a thing, and search engines, the Thoughtbot, wasn't always either one, available, or two, as reliable as you would want it to be. It could be very specific, but it's not like it is now. So I think that back then you needed it as part, like the social aspect was a necessary part of it. And so you would jump into it or avoid it altogether because it was just kind of the nature of the game. It required everyone's input and was more community then. But I don't think that's gone now. I think that a lot of people like to say that the social aspect is totally gone. I think that if you look anywhere at any particular section of WoW, you could find social communities that exist. They're just in Discord. They're in forums. There's a space for everybody now, and because there's a habitable space in so many different areas, it may not be directly in the game anymore, but it's going to be most likely somewhere. I'd say most guilds that I've been in since since Kata have been somewhere else outside of the game, whereas like the main like community space. And it hasn't been really in game for some time. I don't know if they're going to attempt to make it that way, but I don't think it necessarily needs to move back into WoW. I just think WoW needs to accommodate those things existing. Having things to accommodate that everyone's in Discord chat nowadays. The things to do that, to make it, those things intermingle in some sort of way. I don't know how you do that exactly, but maybe an overlays, having like the Discord overlay just function well with the game. That's all that matters. But I don't think the social aspect is gone. That's what I ultimately mean to say. Honestly, World of Warcraft has some impeccable vibes. And I think it's probably to say that the original developers certainly didn't have that as their primary motivation when crafting the game's content systems, but I think it was quickly recognized as emergent behavior. I think it's fair. I think that if you're looking for a cozy or like solo game, I think now is probably the best time to be playing WoW. I think that may have been something that didn't exist in prior expansions, but does exist now. The art style of World of Warcraft has to be one of my favorite parts of the game. While it's graphically simple, it has continued to evolve and is constantly a joy to look at. What is one of your favorite areas the team has crafted? I do agree that it's a very simplistic but stylized format. I will disagree with it being graphically simple. I mean, if you're talking about just the world on its own, vanilla and nothing else, sure. UIs are messy and convoluted, and there's not a good universal like look to them. Some are so involved and others are almost entirely blank but have so many background things going on that they are complex. You just don't see that they're complex. So I would disagree with anything being visually simplistic. I mean, maybe this is a difference between the art and visuals, but I think that the visual elements is very crowded and can get very overwhelming, especially in retail right now. That's just kind of the way it is. I can't say enough about glowing praise about our team. Now and over all these 20 years, I think that one of the best decisions of World of Warcraft has made was setting on a more stylized, paintery art style that really has stood the test of time. Yeah, I think that honestly, it's jaded a lot of people for realistic and just kind of like not really stylized, like the particle animations just being the most colorful thing in any other MMO. It's noticeable, obviously. Simple and clean is how the World of Warcraft likes to be. As far as zones are concerned, the first one that comes to mind, I could name many here, is a zone from Mists of Pandaria expansion. Valley of the Four Winds is one of the most peaceful zones in World of Warcraft. It's just beautiful, inviting agrarian society with a village and a market as its center. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I think that for me, I think the old zones will always like, there's like very few things that hold a candle to it. And even like the Kata zones, I think they have a certain special place because they are a change to those zones. So like you can think about how they previously were and then how they were afterwards. But I think for me, it's probably going to be Nagrand. Just as like, I'm a big fan of Outland. You could say, I guess I could say Hellfire Peninsula as well. Like this is one of my favorite areas probably, but I'd say until Draenor came out, I would say like Thousand Needles too, but, or not Thousand Needles, Blade's Edge. Why did I say Thousand Needles? But Blade's Edge as well. So some of my favorite areas in Outland for sure, but there's definitely been some like more graphically impressive ones. Don't get me wrong, for sure. Getting into an MMORPG can be a difficult task, but I found that the World of Warcraft has been one of the easier ones to play and learn. How do you balance difficulty ratio to make sure it's accessible for players at all skill levels? Balance is what we have to strike at all levels, continuing to serve our loyal veteran players who have been with us for a few years, while still making sure we're keeping the game approachable and accessible. How have they struck that balance? I mean, for me, I would say that balance has been more of a... you can play at the skill level you want to up until a certain point. So as long as you're still like remaining casual, you don't really have to like know rotations or anything optimal until you get to the higher levels of gameplay. So I guess their balance is that up to a certain point, it's pretty like kind of do what you want and how you want. And then once you get to like the highest leagues, then you have to do it exactly the best way. And then from there. But have they really balanced that? I don't really know. Like, I don't think that like leveling isn't really a challenge anymore. You don't really face mobs that you're like, oh, wow, I should probably take this one at a time. I think the days of leveling or even going through dungeons where you either don't just totally destroy it or you just overpull and then maybe die is the days where that's not the case are gone. You know, I think that nowadays leveling is a breeze. You pull mobs of 20. And the hardest thing is when they separate your mobs a certain amount, or they put quests in the game that not necessarily don't have like crazy drop rates, like they're super low, but it's like you have to do an action that's just time consuming and you right click something. And that's really all it is. I would say that's where the leveling lacks balance, where it just seems like it's just a rush to the finish line, and then you don't know your class and you jump into end game content where you start to need to know your class, or you kind of get to that point and then you just stop right there and then you never have to deal with it ever again. So, I mean, I would argue what balance? What balance has been done in the leveling, or in maybe this is more of a PvP question than I'm realizing, but I'd argue that I'm not really seeing a whole lot of balance myself. Maybe it's in like from low mythics to high mythics, because maybe you could argue that that's where the balance comes in. I don't know. I don't really see it, but to each their own, I suppose. The lore in the World of Warcraft has drawn me as a new fan. How does the team continue to expand upon something they've been building up for over 20 years already? The great question. Definitely comes with a challenge for probably the first decade of World of Warcraft. The majority of the lore pieces we visited, major characters we met, have been introduced in real-time strategy games that originated in the Warcraft franchise. Warcraft 3 in particular, those games sketched out contours of a world that the MMO excitedly went to fill in the blanks on and bring to life. I would say it's like modern AI is the way it felt like before its time. It felt like basically they had the framework of the story, like, hey, this is it. AI, tell me where to go from here to do this. Maybe the story would be a little bit better than what it is currently, if that was the case. But for all it's worth, I think they did a great job of bridging those two things. I wouldn't say that they fully abandoned the Warcraft franchise, just because you do have a lot of story, main story characters that even the current story is well steeped in and drenched in, or entrenched in. But that being the case, I think the story still struggles in that it can never quite fully separate from the Warcraft, or these crazy like plot hole fills that don't make sense until they plug in all the pieces at the very end. So I mean, that's kind of the unfortunate part of it. But of course, we are still as we and time move on, we've run out of those older stories to tell. We have created new locations, new villains, new heroes, while keeping older major characters around. We try with these expansions to introduce enough of the new and to ground it in universal themes that don't make you feel like you need to know the whole story of what's happened over the last 8 expansions. I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's so much in the older expansions that is never like quite fully like explained or like fully discussed. For example, how humans came to be through Earthen and the curse of the flesh, or how trolls basically are the origins of night elves and goblins, I believe. And like there's like how the dark portal came to be, or how, I mean, like, most people know the Lich King, most people know like the bosses and stuff like that, but I don't think there's a lot of like, I don't think a new player comes in the game knowing that or caring about that really. So I don't know if that's necessarily true, where someone maybe because those don't matter now, is that's what they mean, where it's like, well, we don't care about those now, so let's just talk about Xal'atath and her feet. The cultural impact of World of Warcraft the cultural impact World of Warcraft has made can't be understated. Jeez, that was a hard sentence. From the classic Make Love Not Warcraft South Park episode to its mention on other programs, what is WoW Team's favorite piece of media representation? It's maybe cheating since it's referring to a previous question. Honestly, I have to say the remarkable life of Evelyn. I think as fun as the South Park episode was, it really was. And it really was because it captured the essence of jumping into Azeroth and chasing your goals, particularly at that moment in time. However, the Evelyn documentary shines. Yeah, they've abandoned the reality. I think World of Warcraft is this, the South Park episode is the essence of what WoW used to be. And then the Evelyn story is what WoW is trying. Like, it's like them trying to change their image post like all the like the hypocrisies and the dramas and the court cases. I think this is like the South Park episode is like that past we ignore that WoW truly has its origins in, but that's a perfect comparison. I like that he chose those two things. That makes a lot of sense. It was surprising to find out that World of Warcraft has great controller support. I'm converting from other console MMOs. Are there any other plans to bring WoW to Xbox or PlayStation consoles? If you, yeah, no, I would say no. Please, no. Yeah, he says no. Even back when I was in high school, the Alliance versus Horde argument was currently relevant. I need to find out which side are you on. I hate to disappoint, but I'm on the for Azeroth side. Eternal war between red versus blue. I'm not going to pick a side here. That would be unwise. Yeah, I think if he did, people would be like, any sort of thing that bad happens to specifically Alliance, they'd blame him. So that's probably the safe move. I understand this is a Vice article, but I mean, I'm going to say a few things that I personally think about this. I mean, I think a lot of these questions were very, very vague and very kind of like very softball as far as things go. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is Vice. This is not like some sort of hit piece or anything like that. So I understand. But if I were to approach Ian in like a series of questions like this, it wouldn't be a set of questions like this where it's like, well, let's talk about the successes and which character do you play? Do you like the music? Is that cool? Do you like that? It would be more of the questions along the line of the social aspects would be, you know, this is a cozy game. I mean, basically, if you're approaching the game like a cozy game where a lot of people can kind of relax, lay back, as opposed to have this community and social interaction, how do you balance the things that make the game more approachable to a single player versus approachable to the masses and to the multiplayer and to the groups and the guilds and the raid groups and the people who are regularly coming together? How do you find the sacrifices from one attends to another? Because these things definitely pull apart at each other. You know, if you, the more you make delves, the more you pull away from the people who want to do mythics, because they're like, wait, delves seem to be the thing that's actually easier for me to do and is much more approachable for me to get gear at endgame. So why not just do that? So how do you find these things pull and tear at each other, and where do you find yourself guiding towards? Do you find yourself putting these things equal in some sort of like slider effect in the middle, or do you find yourself trying to lean towards maybe some sort of progression scale where delves matter the most in the beginning and then raids matter the most at the end? So how do you find these things balance and tear at each other? And then on top of that, when it comes to the things that used to make WoW in its glory, things like the auction house importance and the guilds and the, like, for PvP, those key players, or even for the creators, those machinimas, how do you find those have evolved to a point, and what do you find is the most valuable to WoW now? Like, what do you feel like has sort of teetered off and is the most important? Because it seems like, to me at least, we've swapped those individuals and those groups, those guilds that have become viral sensations across many platforms. We've traded those out for things like MDI, or we've traded those out for like basically like Race the World First, or very few key guilds that have, you know, big sponsors and stuff like that. Do you feel like you've traded the individuals for the organizations, or do you feel like there's something that's more important for WoW's publicity out there that makes more of an effect? Because it feels like to me that we've swapped those individuals that make up a community for organizations that represent larger communities. Like we've taken the people who go, well, you have 50K viewers, you have 50K viewers, so that's more important than 10 people who get 1,000 viewers each. Like, do you feel like that's the goal now? Do you feel like that's what WoW is after, is just appealing to the mass instead? But I don't think that fixes it in a sweet little interview question based thing like that. And I don't know if that's exactly what people want, but that's kind of where I stand. I feel like a lot of times there's good and bad things. I don't think Ian Hazzikostas does a good job, or does a bad job. Sorry. I don't think he does a bad job currently with the game, but I would say a lot of these OG people on the Warcraft team, I would say it used to give me like hope when they stayed for this long period of time, to like, oh, they're gonna keep it true to this sort of thing. But I think what WoW has always needed is fresh and daring perspectives, not safe and small step like things to kind of keep people keep it from bleeding players. I don't think that WoW is dying or anything like that or gonna die, but I do think that the methodologies that they have are just focused on player retention and avoiding excessive bleeding, and then trying to pick up as much as they can every major patch of pulling those players back in, as opposed to let's try something new and different. Even if it sucks, at least we tried, and at least we got some people interested who maybe wouldn't have played the game otherwise. It doesn't feel like they're doing that anymore. For all those defending Ian, I'd say that they have resources like no other company, and have released half of finished expansions with broken classes and had to fix it mid-expansion. The game has never been buggy, or the game has never been as buggy, and they don't seem to get it fixed. He might be a good dude, but the game has been a failure in most aspects under him. Current bloat, Mythic Plus failure, average rates since BFA. No story, ignore classes, huge nerfs during the seasons, hurting minions, people invested in, feels awful. I expect better, we all should. I honestly feel like we should have like a much more approachable like chromie time, you know, like whenever you're taking directions through what's a good example, directions through like maps on an iPhone, it takes you like scenic route. You could go scenic route, but if you do it through like Waze, it'll like drive you through someone's living room. So I feel like we get the Waze version of the story right now, and we very much need the scenic route where we can go like, hey, I don't care about like just burst leveling. Give me like the story in an approachable way where I'm going to run into the important story elements, where like the books, you know, like the books all run into like the proper lore items, essentially. So just so it's a bit more approachable lore wise, I think that would improve the leveling experience for a lot of people. Even if it was like the 1 to 20 leveling experience where you got that, where it's like, here's the intro to the game, but then, okay, here's like the story bits you need to know up until this point. Here's what's important to this current expansion. I think that would be nice, even if it puts you on rails for a little bit. I mean, the leveling experience is already pretty much on rails. It's everything but on like those bowling alley rails. So why not just do that? So that only makes sense to me to do it that way, because right now it does feel like there's a story there. I think I've been unfair in the past in saying that there's no story. I think that there is. I think there are interesting parts. I don't like the pandering personally, but it's also just like really like, it's really like, unless you're the kind of person who's a completionist, you like to read all the lore books, you like to go through all the quests, read all the quest text, etc. It's not super approachable to anybody or enjoyable or worthwhile to just kind of dredge through those things. And if you've already done so many characters, do you want to just go back and read all that? Like I don't know. Maybe just read one of the books. Maybe there's a book list out there for me that could tell me otherwise. I'm sure there's going to be people who are going to tell me that I know nothing about the story, and that's fair. Sure. Okay. So so it is what it is. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I would like to know, like, I mean, like what people are currently thinking about the game, but also, you know, with the game having such a long and tested time, what do you think is the way moving forward for them to not just appeal to us as current players, but also people joining the game for the first time? Or what are the things the game is missing that we need to see now more than ever? There's a number of things, you know, there's a number of things that we could fix. We could fix Mythic Plus, we could fix rating, we could improve delves. But what are the things that I think fix the core of the game that made it fun? We're not going to make the leveling experience like it used to be, but maybe we can make the quest experience more, less of lore dumps. Like we won't just like dump all this lore on everybody, but maybe just kind of slowing it down a bit to where it's not just a breeze and you're just like, all right, well, I'm now max level. So what do we do now? So that's the way it feels anyways. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to the page while you're at it. And of course, I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.